Hi, this is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle, back again on our pandemic projects. We're going to continue to try and post these on a daily basis, or as close to a daily basis as we can, while this pandemic continues. And unfortunately, we are into quite a span. This is almost 9 months now, I guess, of this. And thank you to all of the first responders and emergency personnel and folks that are on the front lines every day trying to keep us safe as the scientists continue to try and develop vaccines. And a special thanks today to the hospital workers, the teachers, and hotel employees as the holidays are coming up and folks are starting to think about traveling. These folks are out there trying to keep us safe during our travels. So thank you very much to everybody out there doing their part. And we need to do our part too by wearing our masks and maintaining our social distances and everything else as this disease comes back with a vengeance. So today we're going to work on another one of Kevin's reels. Kevin's out in Arizona. He sent them to me. This is an Ocean City 165. It's a pretty large and pretty sturdy reel. And I just noticed as I was kind of doing this that there's a little bit of chirping going on in that spool. You can hear that. And that generally is a function of the spool starting to get a little bit of a warping in it. And there's nothing you can do about that, unfortunately. And replacement spools are generally out of the question. How does that happen? Well, on the older lines, on metal spools, you would get a lot of tension. They used to tell you, take the old Dacron lines off, or nylon lines, whatever was braided at the time, linen lines. They used to tell you take it off between use because the pressure would force the side plates out, and eventually over time they would kind of have a metal memory to them that would cause them to kind of warp. And it sounds like we got a little bit of that going on here, but nothing that's going to prevent it from getting fished, that's for sure. Okay, you also notice another feature with this. The Ocean City reels with this type of lever release the free spool by pushing out. I got one of the first reels I went to repair. Somebody brought it in and told me they broke that off, which I'm thinking, okay, did they lose the pin here or something? There's a pin holding that on. No, they assumed that this was like a pen reel and it went back and forth like a pendulum, and they couldn't get it to work. They thought it was stuck. They went in, they grabbed the wrench, apparently, or pliers or something, and they tried to free it by pulling it that way. And of course, they snapped it right off. And makes for an interesting story. All right, so let's take this one apart. We'll show you how this reel is made, how to service it, clean it up a little bit for Kevin, and get it back out going. One of the nice things with the Ocean City, on most of the models, they included a wrench right in the handle, so you didn't have to go searching to figure out what the wrench was or the nut was and how to get it loose. So this is just coin operated. Actually, if you have a coin, you can put it in there and turn that, and then you have enough ridges where you can work it out by hand. So we'll take that wrench off. It also serves as a locking mechanism for the nut so that it doesn't travel, and just use the wrench until you get it loose, and then you can undo the rest of it with hand strength. I like to do that, hand tighten and hand loosen if possible. All right, you'll notice I'm wearing a glove on my hand here to keep some of the dirt and grease and grime off. Unfortunately, I can't find anything that's comfortable with my dominant hand, which I work on, or with. And you just simply can pull up on that, and sometimes I tell folks you can just back the star drag off. In this case, the star adjuster has a little bit of a tension washer between the two, which might cause it to jam as opposed to pushing it up. All right, counterclockwise removes the star adjuster. And what I recommend here is take pictures along the way if you don't know the diagram or how this one works, because if you don't take the pictures and you have all the pieces and parts out and you get lost along the way, you may have a little bit of trouble putting this thing back together again. All right, I was just noticing on the back that we're scarred here, and that generally means that there's no room left in the adjustment and it's been running up against here. So this probably needs drag washers. We'll see what that's all about when we go to open it up and service this. All right, take all of these side plate screws out. And find the right screwdriver to do that. And I think what we're going to find here is that we probably have different size screws. So put them on your desk as you're taking them out. And I've been asked, does it matter if you use a mechanical screwdriver, something like this? Certainly there's a lot of screws in here. On the outbound side, not too much. There's little cause for concern there, but if you, on the inbound side, when you're putting them back in, I don't recommend it. What I do recommend is if you don't have the hand strength to do that, then I would recommend that you go ahead and do a short. In other words, tighten it up with your mechanical screwdriver, but don't tighten it all the way. Leave it short, and then do the last turn or two by hand. That way you won't risk breaking a case or over tightening the assembly. All right, you're noticing I'm putting them into two groups because they are long and shorts. There's ones that go in the reel seat are shorter than the ones that go in the crossbar, and we have three different sizes. So don't assume that they're all the same size. This one gets longer screws, so there's two long screws that goes with the one with the harness. Then there's the three screws for the reel seat, and then the ones in the middle are the ones for the crossbars without the harness look. All right, so that takes care of getting the side plate off. This is your drag adjuster, and this is a washer that goes on it. And then let's go see what we have underneath then. We can remove our assembly here, the trim ring and the reel spool. And in the back here we'll notice that's bone dry, so maybe that's what's causing the chirp, but I doubt it. Alright, this is an odd one. It's got 3 bridge screws. It's got 2 adjuster screws. In order to get here, you need to take the yoke and jack assembly off. Start by taking the big screw off the top. Be careful with that. If you rip that, you're in trouble with the adjuster on the other side. It screws into this. So you start there by taking that screw out. Then this slides up, and be careful, there's springs under here too. That slides up, and we have the 2 springs which fit in the cavity. I'm going to put those right in a parts tray. If I didn't say that before, I have a parts tray. It's the bottom of a milk jug, and I like to take that off. Then I'm going to take there's a main gear, or I'm sorry, pinion gear. There's a collar for the pinion gear, and there's the yoke. So this comes off, so pay attention to the orientation on that. And before I take the rest of this off, I'm going to go ahead and clean these pieces off. I'm going to use some steel wool here. There's just some dried grease on it. You may be able to get this off with just a general degreaser and a paper towel. This stuff looks like it's a little bit more than that. The front side is pretty clean, so I'm just going to wipe off the balance. If you need to use a metal cleaner, go ahead and do that. But just make sure it's clean. If it's not clean, what's going to happen is it's going to impact the slip and slide and the free spool function. I'm going to do the same thing here. On the yoke, you're going to notice that there is a clip on the one side. That clip goes to the back. That's right here. So when you go to reinstall, you need to pay attention to those little details. I'm going to use a little bit of penetrating oil as a general degreaser there, and I'm going to use a blade of a utility knife to scrape off some of that hardcore grease that's dried there. You can certainly do this by just continuing to do the the steel wall over time. It will wear it down, but that will expedite it. Okay, so those two parts are clean. Check the teeth on your pinion gear. These are all clean. This reel's very dry. I guess if there's anything to be said about that. So I'm going to use fishing reel grease. I'm going to use Penn's Precision Reel Grease for this. And I'm going to check the teeth, make sure that they're all uniform, not chipped or bent or cracked. I think we would have felt that when I did a pre-test on this one to make sure that everything was operating properly. That's when I noticed that the spool was chirping. And then we have this little collar that's going to sit on that gear, just like that. And then we can lube our yoke, both sides. Remember that the stud goes to the back, like that. And then I'm just going to lay that up top here. I could put that in my parts tray if I liked. Come over here, and let's make sure while we have the grease brush out that we get some grease into the little adjuster. And if you like, you can put some grease onto the click tongue. Those things tend to rust, so it doesn't hurt to get a little grease there. We're going to set that aside. We'll come over to do the main gear now and find out what's going on there with that the drag stack, see if we're okay there. There's two bigger springs now. Remember, we have the two small ones that go up here in the cavity. There's two bigger ones which sit on top of those side plate. They're the pieces in the side plate that hold the yoke assembly. I'm going to put those into my tray, noting that those are the bigger ones. You don't have to remove these. Sometimes folks think that you got to pull all 6, or in this case 5 pieces out. No, you can leave those 2 in. And I'm going to go below now, and I'm going to remove the 3 screws that are the bridge screws for this assembly. It's kind of odd. If you're working on a Penn reel, you'll always notice that there's 4. I guess the way that they designed and engineered this, you only wound up with the 3. So I'm thinking we're either missing a cap washer in this one, or the drag washers are just plain broken, and to the point where they're when you tighten down the adjuster, you didn't have any play here. All right, so we took that off. This is simply a matter of just pushing out now. The spring should be, there's one of 2 ways that the anti-reverse dog spring works. We'll show it to you in just a moment. One of them is it's actually attached to the bridge. I don't see any spring coming through this side of the bridge, so I'm going to assume I got what I call a rocket spring. There's a little coil spring that pushes up against the anti-reverse dog, and we'll show you that in a moment. I cup my hand just for that reason. I don't want that spring to fly away. And then I just push out on the assembly, and that'll help me capture that spring. So here's what I call the rocket spring. It's embedded into the side case. And in this case, looks like we're missing the cap washer here, which is probably why we don't have the clearance. I'm going to just take this spring out by hand here, just so I don't lose that. But that's the anti-reverse spring with a little metal cap on the end of it, which is going to push the anti-reverse dog. That goes into my tray. And again, if you're not that familiar with this stuff, take pictures while you're cleaning up and the like. That'll help you to reinstall this properly. Let's clean the case. I'm just going to use some penetrating oil as a general degreaser. Let's go underneath. These Ocean City reels, you can't get parts for them anymore, but interestingly enough, Ocean City was made in Pennsylvania. It predated Penn. The fellow that started Penn actually had worked in the Ocean City plant for a while before he came out and started his own company. And the good news with a lot of this is that many of the parts are interchangeable. Now, I don't know if that's because they just used the same suppliers, or because somebody wasn't creative enough, or just that they were happy with the specs and how they performed. I'm using the side of this. I'm not cutting in. I'm using the side of my screwdriver here just to clean up some of the stuck grease in the cavities here. It's kind of a scraping function. There we go. It's nice and clean now. And then let's go over here and see what we got. So the The anti-reverse probably wasn't working very well because it was glued to the case here. So let's go make sure that dog gets cleaned up before we reinstall. We use some steel wool for that. Alright, put that in my parts tray. Let's see if we can get this off now. We can. And just like the pen reels, there's a little pin that's going to be holding this shaft on. So you want to find that. I'm going to use a metal pin here. And at the risk of my long-term viewers hearing it one more time, this is not a tool generally in the marketplace. It's Yankee Ingenuity. It's a bottom of an electric probe tester from an automobile, circuit tester, but it serves its purpose. Now Eddie just was watching and he told me go to Harbor Freight and get the punches, and I may just do that. But I've been using that piece for quite some time now, and I'm accustomed to it. So some old habits die hard. All right, I just want to get the junk out of the middle of this. Junk is a technical term, I guess, huh? I'll just clean that up with a cotton swab. You can see the accumulated grease that was in there. The bridge is just full of dried grease, so let's get that done. You can see why this wheel was performing as it was performing. I'm going to use a screwdriver as a general scraper here. These things, this is really just kind of shellacked on there, but the good news is the bridge is stainless or chromed, probably chromed, and cleans up pretty nicely. So if you're enjoying this, I ask you to subscribe so that you can see more. I ask you to like it on the video down at the button by clicking that, and if you do subscribe, I ask you to click notifications. That way you won't miss any of the episodes that I post, and I do post frequently. And like I said, it's a couple of reasons here. For those of you who want to do it yourself, it's certainly trying to show you how to do this. And if you have one of these reels, it'll show you specifically. And if you don't have this particular reel or other reels I'm working on, I'll show you the general process and approach to it, whether it's a spinning reel, bait caster, or conventional reel like this one is. And if you generally follow those processes, you will be successful. Glove up, use parts trays, take pictures. The rest is kind of by the mechanics. Okay, here's that sleeve is going back on now. I'm pushing in that little peg. And if you can't push it in with that, use a screwdriver blade to assist, or a dead blow hammer. Tap it in. Just make sure that clears that ridge there, or you won't get your main gear back on. All right, here's our drag stack. And this is one. So this one's pretty worn here, which I think we probably expected. I'm just going to go see if I can pull a pen Jigmaster drag washer. I think that'll probably fit, and that'll probably restore what we need here in terms of the drag clearance on the other side. That's an old-timer's trick. Just doubling up the drag washers will give you the clearances that you need. And then in this case, we're going to take a piece of steel wool here and make sure that this metal piece, the metal washer here, is dirt and contamination free so that it can slip and the drag can operate properly. All right, I will just shut the camera off, and I'm going to go search for that Jigmaster drag washer, and then I'll be back. Okay, so I've returned. I found a Penn HT100 drag washer, and doing a quick test, it's just a little short of what the other piece was in circumference, not terribly, but enough that it's going to do the same thing that it was, what the other main gear was doing in terms of the washer. And we will have the slip with this one on this, We will also build it up so that we are outside of that little cup on the side plate, and we will be able to have the function of a drag washer as opposed to this press down piece going on here. All right, so I've put that drag washer, laid it on top of the original. I'm going to check the main gear now. I'm going to clear all of the cavities. And then I want to grease it. So if I didn't mention it before, I'm using Penn Precision Real Grease here as the blue grease, not a Penn. It's not sponsored by anybody. It's just people ask what grease you use, so that's the one I use. And it's obviously it can go to any kind of fishing reel, whether it's in this case Ocean City or spinners or anything. All right, now we can put this whole assembly back on, and now you can tell how much prouder this is in terms of leveling up here, which is exactly what we want. Okay, I'm going to just clear this channel out here, and we'll go reinstall the bridge. You have to go in the reverse order that you took them out. Seems like there's just a little bit more of that dried grease here, so let's get that off before we go any further. And a little bit down here in the channel. And again, I'm just using a screwdriver as a scraper at this point. All right, a little bit of grease onto the side plate bushing for the spool. I'm going to put this in kind of upside down for a moment, or actually, yeah, we're going to want to take this one out. Sometimes you can get by this, sometimes you can't. When you go to reinstall, you have to rotate that bridge. Just remember, when you go to reinstall this, that's the one that needs to come out. When you go to reinstall, what you're going to want to do is make sure that the flat side, there's an indentation and this faces inward. Okay, I'm going to get the bridge screw. I get the bridge screw. I knew it was a different screw I was looking for. The bridge screw comes into the bottom here. The nicely cleaned up anti-reverse dog goes in next. I want to make sure that that meshes into the cavity there. Then my favorite little, where's this one going to shoot, rocket spring goes in. Sure that the tip hooks to the tip here, and you rotate this the rest of the way. Make sure that your screw lines up with the hole and get that started. I don't tighten it down all the way at this point. I want to put the other two screws in first. And then we're going to complete the rest of this service here. We should have a functioning drag in addition to a nice cleaned up reel. Okay, now we want to take this, again, this slot belongs facing inward this way. Screw on this side. I'm holding the plate screw on the other side. Make sure that it's flat here. You can see how the indentations go. Next up then, we want to go back and get those two very big springs. They ride over those collars there. Then we can get our yoke assembly, which we've already greased. Gotta press down on that, get that everything to clear. Just like that. So you can see the slots. I'm going to grab our two smaller springs, which go in the upper cavity. Now I'm trying to hold this in here because when we go to do the rest of this, it may just pop. Then we're going to take our jack, I'm going to slide that into the slots. And then we're going to put our screw in so that we can attach that to the lever in the back. Now you want to make sure that with this lever in the back that you get enough that you can notice it pulling in. Now it's not pulling in there, it's not going to release this. So you want to tighten it down more. And now you can see how it's pulled in, and that's going to be your free spool release. Alright, simple enough now. It's just a matter of putting some grease onto this. We'll see if there's still a chirp in here or not. I'm assuming that there's going to be a chirp in there. I'm going to just take a moment here, just clean up a little bit of that spool. There's some salt on there from where the line was. And I'm saying salt, it may just be some dirty water. Grab a fresh towel here. Clean that up. Remember, we have 3 different size screws now. So we're going to put the short end with the click ratchet, goes to the back. Sits in the bush. Then I like to put these in with the free spool off. We also have the trim ring, which needs to go back on. That should be the right orientation there. Do a little bit of quick cleaning on that as well. All right, now we can align those holes. This looks like it's the right way. And I'm not going to worry about the harness lug yet. I'm going to simply line up a couple that don't have that piece. Remember, we got 3 different sizes here. 2 long ones are for the harness lug up top. So I'm going to lay these out again so that I know which is which. Those are the 2 that go up top. So these are side plate screws. And we know the short ones go into the rear seat. And I'm going to do this in a kind of a northeast-southwest pattern. Another intermediate screw. This way you can avoid frame twist. If you alternate around, you'll make sure that the plate goes on square. I'm going to grab a short one. And this rear seat has 3, so I'm going to put it right in the middle. There you go. I think we just heard it snap in place now. And I can come back and fill in the gaps on these. I'm just going to leave that lug to be the last one in. That's the last of the intermediate screws here. Now I can get the harness lug. Slide that in, line the holes. One started. Get the other started and we can tie them both down. So if you like what you're seeing, please indicate that on the video. If you have questions about this reel or any reel in particular, go ahead and ask that of me, and I'll try and give you an answer. If you want to see more, as I mentioned before, please subscribe. And finally, if you have a reel that needs service and you're not up for servicing that yourself, well then go ahead and contact me on the business card. Use my email and you'll be able to get the service information you need. in order to get your reel serviced. Okay, so now we have the clearance we need for the drag washers. So it's up top. I'm beginning to wonder as I did that the Jigmaster piece if that cap washer doesn't belong below, but at any rate the other one was terribly worn. And we showed you the workaround there. There's a slot in these. If you grab the right size screwdriver, you can generally grab the slot, and that'll enable you to hold the gear sleeve while you tighten down the drag adjuster. Once you get enough clearance, go ahead and put the handle on so that you can tighten it down to full length. Don't forget you have that little washer that was between there. Come on back up then. I'm going to close this down. Come back up, put your handle on. Get your handle screw. Again, I like to tighten as much by hand as I can. That makes sure that I don't cross strip. And we can grab our handle wrench. You want to make sure it's tight. You don't want to just flip it over there and the first time around get it lined up. But when you feel it's snugging, and it's snugging right now, then go ahead and line that up. Turn that in by hand. Didn't quite have that. There you go. Tighten it up by hand. And then the last one, use a coin or again use a screwdriver or something, that last tight piece to it. Look at that. A whole lot different because we have that drag reset now. You don't have anything rubbing where it shouldn't be rubbing. And we are tight. Make sure that our free spool is working well. And it is. And there's still a little bit of a chirp. Tighten that down just a little bit. I think maybe some of that chirp, although it sounds improbable, some of that chirp may have been just because it was so dry. Or it may have been that it was chirping off of the metal running on that drag washer there. Regardless, that's it. That's your Ocean City 165. It's a nice large size solid reel. And as we showed you, as long as you keep this maintained, this reel is going to last a long time. And even though you don't have direct replacement washers, those Penn Jigmaster washers will work. And it's an acceptable alternative to throwing the reel away for sure. All right, so Kevin, you got another one coming back at you. I thank you for sending that in. And for all, please stay safe, stay listening, maintain your social distancing, and above all, have a great day. This is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle. Thanks for watching.